So welcome everybody to our first panel discussion on the topic of human adaptability in the age of Gen AI. And it's a real pleasure to welcome our panelists for this first discussion, Calum Chace, Loretta Breuning, and Mike Vaughan. Welcome to each of you. Just to start us off, please could I come to each of you in turn and ask you to say hello and just a few words of introduction. Calum, please, I'll start with you.
Hello. My name is Calum Chace, and I had a 30-year career in journalism and business and retired in 2011, which gave me the opportunity to explore an idea I've been fascinated about since I read Ray Kurzweil's Spiritual Machines, Are We Spiritual Machines, in 1999. And that idea is that superintelligent AI might arrive on this planet in my lifetime. I don't think I've ever heard a more interesting or more compelling idea, and I've been exploring that in books and podcasts and talks and other media ever since.
Thank you, Calum. Welcome. Loretta, please. Hi there.
Hi, I'm Loretta Breuning. I'm the founder of the Intermammal Institute, and I do research and write books about the animal brain that controls the chemicals that make us feel good and bad and how it's wired from early experience. And before that, I had a long career as a professor of management.
Welcome, Loretta. Thank you. And last but not least, Mike. Hi there.
Hi, Mike Vaughan. So the CEO of the Regis company. It's a simulation company, and we've created a set of tools, AI tools, to make simulations scalable and affordable. And I'm also the chief editor of The Thinking Effect, and it's a site that is dedicated to L&D professionals to help them learn about and use AI tools to advance their careers.
Thanks, Mike. Well, welcome everybody. It's a pleasure to speak with you now. For those joining the Curiosity Forum for the first time, remember, if you want to join in the conversation, please use the chat. You can message us, ask us questions, and I'll try and feed those into our panel. But let's get into it. We're talking about human adaptability in the age of Gen AI. Let me pose a question to each of you. Astro Teller, Google X, described how technology is evolving faster than humans can adapt. Calum, let's start with you. Do you think it's inevitable that humans are going to get left behind?
Short answer, yes, unless we merge with the machines. Slightly longer answer, I don't think Teller's right yet. We can just about keep up, but technology development is accelerating. There's a phenomenon that's been well noted for decades. We're on an exponential growth path. Our computers are getting twice as powerful every 18 months or so. That's known as Moore's Law. And contrary to popular opinion, it's not stopping or even slowing down. And there's similar exponential rates in various other kinds of technology. And unless it stops, at some point, we're going to create a superintelligence. We're going to create a machine which is smarter than an adult human. It's possible that we might create one which doesn't have any agency or doesn't have any consciousness, but I don't see why that would happen. It seems more likely that it will have both of those things. The consciousness bit is probably the least important. And what happens when we get superintelligence is that we lose control. Just as there's no way that chimpanzees and certainly ants could control humans, we won't be able to control an entity which is millions of times smarter than us. And so I think our best future is that we merge with those machines. So, as I said, short answer, yes, ultimately, unadjusted, unaugmented humans would lose control.
Thanks, Calum. Loretta, Calum mentioned us as mammals. So I'm going to come to you next. What do you think? Do you think it's inevitable that we'll get left behind?
Well, first, we're very influenced by metaphors. And when you present this as a metaphor of a train moving forward and we risk being left behind, that appeals to our natural mammalian fear of being left behind by the herd. And so I don't agree that we'll be left behind. I don't agree with that metaphor. So I think it's better to think of technology as something that we use to serve our own needs. And we're constantly making choices about whether a particular application serves our need in that moment. And the best way to understand that is to think about how a herd really works in nature. So if you see a wildebeest crossing, it looks like they're all moving together, but rather each individual has agency and is making a decision about when to take its next step. And when it has to cross a river and it's attacked by a crocodile, the herd does not protect it from crocodiles, period. Each individual has to deal with that. And so I think AI cannot rescue us from this inherent condition of having to face the crocodiles ourselves. And so we should better off feel empowered and keep reminding ourselves that we constantly have the power to make our choices about when we use it and whether it's an application that serves us.
Thanks, Loretta. Mike, what do you think?
So I did my very first AI project in early 90s and actually implementing some neural nets. And so saw kind of breakthroughs happening almost every 10 years. And then it started accelerating to about every 5 years. And then most recently, every year, and then every month. And now, honestly, seeing breakthroughs almost every week. And so in one sense, it's really exciting. In another sense, it's very daunting and quite intimidating at times, even with my passion for AI. The estimates are around about 8 years to 10 years before we start seeing AGI. And that's when AI starts to become quite intelligent, where it can generalize its intelligence across different types of domains. And that, again, is also both exciting and scary, because I think that's when, as Calum was saying, that we're going to have to be really serious about how do we either integrate and leverage the AI or start to really put some boundaries around what people are allowed to do and not do with AI. So I do think it's a great tool that amplifies us right now. And I don't know about the idea of merging with AI, but certainly having it accentuate all the different types of activities and free us up from doing a lot of the mundane stuff is certainly something that I think is very powerful.
Thanks, Mike. Calum, let's go back to you. Merging with the AI, tell us more about that. What can we do to adapt as AI becomes part of our daily lives, as Loretta says, I guess, whether we like it or not?
Well, you have to be specific about what time frame you're thinking about. AGI, as Mike said, some people think it's going to happen in 8 years. And artificial general intelligence, AGI, is an AI which has all the cognitive abilities of an adult human. What you get beyond that is superintelligence, and there's probably no upper limit to that. And as I say, it could be millions of times smarter. In the period between now and the arrival of AGI, we do have control. We're smarter than it. We can decide what it can and can't do. And in theory, we could decide whether to develop it further. In practice, I don't think we can. I think that because the advantage of owning a better AI than your competitor is so great, you win whatever competition you're in. We're not going to stop. If you're a company or a government, then having a better AI is really, really important. If you're a military, it is literally life and death. So I think it's impossible for us to cease developing advanced AI. And cease is one of the 4 C's. I think there are 4 C's in our future, 4 possible scenarios. Cease is one of them. The second one is control, which a lot of people are working on really hard, and I hope they succeed. But I just don't see how we can ever hope to control entities which are a million times smarter than us. And then the third scenario is catastrophe. Many people think this is inevitable. I don't. The fourth scenario is celebration, which is that the superintelligence really, really likes us, decides to help us. And as I say, encourages us or allows us to merge with it. Why do I think that would be a good thing? Being human is really terrific. I'm really enjoying being human, and I don't want to stop. However, being superhuman would be better, almost by definition. Humans are subject to all sorts of frailties and limitations. We die, we can't travel through space, we can't be in more than one place at any one time. Superhumans, superintelligences will surpass many of these limitations. And I think that would be a very good thing.
So kind of perhaps that's the positive if for those that want to live a more superhuman life. Loretta, there's a lot of fear and anxiety around, particularly the Gen AI world that we're going through at the moment. Is this misplaced, the fear and anxiety that people are experiencing?
Well, expectations have a huge impact on our emotions. You may have heard that if rewards exceed your expectations, dopamine is triggered. If rewards fall short of your expectations, cortisol, the stress chemical, is triggered. So a lot of it has to do with individual expectations. And I'll give you a great example. When I decide to use an AI virtual assistant while I'm maybe getting tech support or something, and if I think, oh, this will save me time, and then, as you know, often doesn't save you time. And then you get very frustrated, and that's a lot of stress, and the stress is in your body for a good hour. So managing one's own expectations, I think, is a huge factor in whatever particular AI goals a person sets. And we can't always predict, will this save me time or not? A lot of uncertainty, but to be conscious of your own goals. My goal is to communicate and save time. Is this tool helping me do it? Can I have realistic expectations and exceed them?
Yeah. Mike, let me ask you a very direct question. Do you think Gen AI will make us lazy? Mm-hmm. And are there some new skills that we're going to need to learn instead of just becoming lazy and letting things, let it take our place there?
Well, I think for the next 10 years, no, it's not going to make us lazy whatsoever. I think it's going to be tools, and we're already seeing this, that these tools are already helping accelerate, especially in the L&D community. They're helping us accelerate every aspect of asset creation to creating online learning, and freeing us up in many ways to do what I think we love doing, which is creating experiences that all of us really can grow from. And so in many ways, I think it's going to be the best thing that's going to happen in the L&D community over the next 10 years. Will it make us lazy going forward? I think there is that potential. Already saw some pretty cool tech. I don't know if anyone saw that AI pin that came out recently, but it's pretty amazing in what it's already allowing people to do and taking care of a lot of activities for you. And does that free us up to do other things? Perhaps. But does it also make us a little bit lazy and not put the thought necessary into the critical thinking? Yeah, I do think that is a high possibility.
Do you think we're learning new skills, or are there new skills that already we need to learn that you're seeing, Mike?
I think we need, I think they're the skills that we know, which is kind of the higher cognitive skills, the critical thinking, the analyzing, being able to weed through all the noise, decision making, problem solving. These are the things that make us uniquely human. And these are kind of the things that AI, at least right now, is not good at. AI is a great knowledge repository, but it's not great at doing a lot of those types of things yet. And so I think those are the skills that we need to focus on in the next 5 to 10 years and really start to develop those out.
I'm going to just turn to the chat and I'll look at a couple of the questions in the chat. There's a few that where folk are asking about ethics here. Just to pick one up, Calum, I'll come to you first. What ethical considerations should we keep in mind as Gen AI continues to advance?
I'm nervous about the use of the word ethics when it comes to AI because it creates false expectations. AIs currently are not conscious. They're not ethical agents. They don't have any morality. We do as humans, and the way we use them can be sensible or not sensible. But it's, I think, slightly dangerous to talk about AI ethics. And the other trouble with the word is that if you disagree with somebody about a course of action and you think it's a moral disagreement, then the danger is you think that person's bad, not just wrong, not just making a mistake, they're actually bad. And arguments can get overheated. I prefer the term responsible AI. And I think in the next period, before we get to the singularities, I think there's a bunch of singularities that will come before the technological singularity, which is the creation of superintelligence. I think in this earlier period, before we get to the singularities, there's lots of ways in which AI can be very, very positive, and there's lots of ways in which it can be very damaging. Clearly, it's already starting to be used in mass personalized hacking, and that's a big worry. And an example of that is, I think this isn't happening yet, but fairly soon, we're going to start getting phone calls, which are automated spam calls and appear to be from a member of our family. The voice, the tone, the vocabulary will be virtually indistinguishable from that member of the family. And they will say, help, I'm in a lot of trouble, send a lot of money to this number now. And I think we should all have a safe word or a safe phrase in our families so that we can ask a question which the mass personalized fake cannot answer. So that's just one example. Privacy, bias, transparency. There's a whole bunch of ways in which AI can be misused, clearly. Equally, there's a whole bunch of ways in which AI is already being used to create miracles, frankly. The previous big bang in AI, which came in 2012, which brought deep learning, brought us things like instantaneous translation, maps that tell you how long it's going to take you to do quite a long journey, and which way to go, photo recognition, all sorts of really extraordinary things. And Gen AI is creating a whole new set of miracles, and it's going to dramatically improve healthcare, dramatically improve education. There's lots and lots of ways in which AI is going to improve all of our lives. So yes, what people refer to as AI ethics is important. I prefer the term responsible AI for it.
Loretta, do you have a view on the ethical question? I saw you nodding there.
Yeah, I was shaking my head at that thing. I think some historical context is interesting. Did you know that Socrates did not know how to write, even though he lived at a time when writing existed? Confucius and Jesus did not know how to write. Everything we know about them was written down by others. And Socrates claimed that learning to write was unethical because it would make it harder for children to learn the skill of memorizing, which was the valued skill at those times. So that's fascinating. And then people, mostly humans, did not know how to read for, all through human history. And then people quickly were motivated to learn to read when the printing press was invented and started printing Bibles in the vernacular language. So people felt like they had the word of God directly and didn't have to rely on gatekeepers. So I think it's these human dramas, like the gatekeepers would have thought that that was very unethical. So everyone is very much formed in their own self-interest, but of course, everyone appeals to ethics cannot acknowledge their self-interest. So ethical arguments are often quite tedious, in my opinion.
To move us along, Loretta, you talk about sort of Socrates and how writing is moved on education, and the printing press then moved on education. Mike, how do you think Gen AI is going to influence the way we think about learning in our society?
Well, some of the things that we're already seeing, which is the use of even just something as simple as ChatGPT, is that it's already helping people learn to write better. So it's actually kind of leveling the playing field. I think BCG wrote a pretty good report recently where they gave some AI tools to individuals that were known to be quite good in their job, and then some others that were kind of new, didn't really understand it. And it really helped amplify the skills of those individuals that were new to the role and didn't really understand the role. And so that's to level the playing field, which is pretty exciting because that starts to help organizations really give opportunity to a lot of people that typically would not have that opportunity. So we're seeing that already. We're also seeing that the tools are allowing people to kind of shift and focus on kind of higher, more difficult types of problems and challenges, especially in the learning community. Instead of focusing on kind of that knowledge level learning, which AI is quite good at, we can now focus on creating experiences that change the hearts and minds of learners. And so we're already starting to see kind of a shift towards that as well. So I guess in many ways, I see a lot of good coming from what we're learning from the AI tools and what it's going to allow us to do going forward.
Thank you. Calum, what do you think on that one?
I agree with Mike. I think generative AI will help many people write a lot better. And that's an underrated advantage. A lot of the writing that people send to each other isn't terribly clear. And so that creates lots of misunderstanding. So if we all communicate better, that'd be a huge improvement. I think really we don't know the differences that Gen AI is going to make. It's only been a year since ChatGPT was launched. It's been 7 months since GPT-4 was launched. So it's very early days. I think it will be like spreadsheets where people thought, oh God, that's the end of people, children, everybody knowing how to add things up and do basic arithmetic. But actually, spreadsheets has made us able to do much more complicated, useful things than we were able to do back in the old days when I was in school, when we used to use slide rules, believe it or not. So I think it will be a tremendous accelerator of human ability, and we will see really interesting and surprising effects.
Loretta, you mentioned earlier that around our ability to follow the herd, and we quite like just to follow the herd. That's a nice, safe place to be. There's a lot of experimentation and enthusiasm, particularly for Gen AI, but of course wider AI applications at the moment. Are we at risk of just blindly following the herd? If so, what should we do about that?
I think we're already blindly following the herd in daily life. And so this will just be another thing about it. So the solution is always to become aware of your personal agency. And as I said, when you see a video of a herd moving across the savannah, you don't realize that that's an emergent property of individual decisions, and to keep bringing your consciousness back to the individual, like each wildebeest is making a decision. Should I walk this way or should I walk that way? If they walk toward the herd, all of the grass that's available to them has already been peed on, and they know the difference and they don't like it. So they're motivated to step away from the herd. But if they take too many steps away from the herd, then they'll be eaten by a predator. So they're always making the decision, should I take this next step a little closer to the herd or a little away? And that's really the agency that we have, is like, how much in this particular moment will this AI tool help me advance my goals? Or how much can I work better without that tool? And frankly, I have friends who have done things on AI and then spent more time revising them and said they could have done it faster themselves. So just that's the decision that we'll be faced with in each moment.
Mike, do you agree? And when we mentioned experimentation, what are some of your sort of favorite experiments that you're seeing around Gen AI at the moment?
Well, a quick experiment that I did on myself. I've been traveling every single week and speaking about AI, meeting with organizations and CLOs. And so all that travel has put a lot of pressure on my wife to take care of things. And so I decided I'm going to write her a really nice love letter and have this wonderful meal for her. And so I put this letter together, and then I was like, I'm going to run this through ChatGPT and see what it does with it. And first off, it was very humbling because it rewrote a lot of it. But what it did really well is that it changed and reframed things. So the intent was something that she could hear, something that she could feel. So I actually shared it with her, and it was, we're having a good laugh over it. And she was like, this is amazing. I really feel heard. And so it taught me how that I need to think about the words that I use, how I frame things, how I structure something. So, she felt heard. So that was a recent experiment. That was pretty exciting. And then you asked about do I agree with the herd thing? What I'm seeing right now is that it doesn't feel like a single herd. It feels like there's all of these different opportunities that are starting to take place. There's all this stuff going on in healthcare now, and then all this stuff going in the back with deep AI and deep learning and so forth. And then all this stuff around robotics and cars. And, it's almost like it's giving all these different opportunities. So it's not just following one single herd any longer. It really does feel like it's opening up opportunities that you can now follow your passion and do something with AI that you might not have ever had a chance to do before. So I do see it not as a single big herd any longer.
Calum, what's your view on this? And again, any particularly favorite experiments that you're paying attention to?
Well, first of all, I want to pay credit to Mike. What an extraordinary brave thing to do, to admit that you had GPT-4 help write a love letter to your wife. I think that's splendid. I would never admit that. I would never do it. No, seriously, I use GPT-4 a lot. I write two kinds of books. I write about AI and I write about travel, because I travel quite a lot. And I use GPT-4 to write the first draft of a lot of the chapters in my travel books. And in the editing process, I have to essentially entirely rewrite it. So there's not much left from the first draft. However, getting the first draft done is always the most painful and tedious and annoying part of writing. So it's wonderful to have a machine do that for me. I think it speeds me up by about 50%, which is dramatic. And I think I'm part of one of two herds. I think there's two herds at the moment in areas of the world which have got access to GPT-4. One herd is busily experimenting away and finding out what works, what doesn't work, and wasting time on some projects and saving a lot of time on other projects. And then there's another herd which either hasn't really thought about it or is scared of it and isn't using it. And I think that second herd is putting itself at a grave disadvantage in the job market and in actually possibly in the love market as well, as Mike's experience is anything to go by.
One of the topics that's coming up in the chat at the moment is about work and the future of work and what AI will mean for jobs and the roles that we do. Brandon was asking, do we think, maybe Calum, I'll ask you first, there will be a job left untouched by AI in a reasonable time frame, let's say?
Short answer, no. I've thought about this a great deal. I wrote a book called The Economic Singularity about what happens to jobs. And again, I think it all depends on what time frame we're talking about. At some point, unless we stop developing these machines, and as I've said, I don't think we will, or unless there is some reason why there's a hard stop, we simply can't, or it's physically impossible to make them smarter. Assuming neither of those two things is true, at some point we will make machines which can do pretty much everything that we can do for money, cheaper, better, and faster than us. Now, that might happen at the same time as we create superintelligence, or there might be a gap. I suspect there'll be a period between when we make machines which can do everything we can do in the workplace for jobs, for money, and when we create superintelligence. And during that period, we'll have all of the humans with no jobs, which isn't necessarily a problem if we can figure out how to distribute the wealth, which will still be being made because machines will still be doing lots of jobs. And humans will be doing lots of work. Work is something that we do for fun as well as for money. And in fact, most humans, the jobs they do don't give them any fun. They don't give them any meaning. There's lots and lots of surveys have shown there's only about 15% of people who really, really enjoy their jobs feel self-actualized by them. Most people do their jobs just to put food on the table. So if we can take that drudgery away, that would be a good thing. Now, when will that happen? When will we get the economic singularity so that there are no more jobs for humans? I don't know. I used to think it was probably 25 years or more. When GPT-4 came along, I thought, look, it's going to be quicker than that. And some of the people who are, most at the coalface, who are developing these systems, think it's going to be very soon. Sam Altman seems to think that we're going to have superintelligence before the end of the decade. If he's right, that means we all ought to be spending a lot more time thinking about the implications of this than we are. We're really only at the beginning of the conversation. We only just had the Bletchley Park Summit on AI safety last week, and that was the first, or a couple of weeks ago, that was the first time that world politicians had even mentioned the word existential risk. So we're very early stages of the conversation that we need to be having.
Thank you, Calum. We're at the early stages of the AI conversation. We're at the closing stages of this first conversation. Loretta, just to turn to you, any final thoughts? What's top of your mind as we close this panel discussion?
Well, as a college professor, I've spent a lot of time getting papers from students that don't really say anything. And now in my work life, I get a lot of marketing pitches that don't say anything. So if everyone can write this drivel faster, it's not a step forward to me. It's not a step back. So I think we have to keep in mind our real goal is to communicate meaning, and our effectiveness depends on communicating meaning. And the other quickly, when calculators were invented and students didn't have to learn math, they said because the calculator would do it. But many of us have been at a checkout in a store and been with a store clerk who can't do simple arithmetic. So I think that's really good model to keep in mind. Imagine a person going through life that can't do simple arithmetic because they were told that a machine would do it for them. I always say you can't bake cookies because if you can't have 3/4 of a cup of an ingredient, then that was my bar for math.
Thanks, Loretta. Mike, your closing thoughts, please.
Yeah, I've been in the L&D community for 25 years, and I really believe that this is the greatest opportunity L&D professionals have in leveraging these tools. And unfortunately, what I'm seeing in most organizations is very few people are even trying the tools. Now, there's good reason. A lot of organizations are very nervous and anxious, but there is an opportunity to start to play with a lot of these tools even outside of the organization. And I'm seeing people not making the time to do so. And I don't believe that it's going to take L&D jobs. I think it's going to rewrite the jobs and change the descriptions of what people focus on. So my encouragement to people would be embrace these tools, start to use them. They're going to help you get faster, better, cheaper, quite frankly. I know that sounds cliche, but it's very real. And it's also going to help you move in your career. And it's going to, shift you from being someone that's just a knowledge, producing content knowledge to someone who can really create experiences that really engage the hearts and minds of learners.
Thanks, Mike. I'd like to take a moment to thank each of you for participating in a great conversation. Calum, Loretta, Mike, thank you very much. Thanks, Joel, for scribing and drawing this one. And thanks, everyone, for participating in the chat. See, a lot of conversation and even broader topics than I think we can cover in half an hour. So keep it up. And our panelists, I think, will join you in that. But thank you once again. Brilliant first conversation. And Garrick, I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
So a big thank you, Garrick. I think if my wife can hear me, she'll be wondering why there was now strange humming noises coming from my office. But interesting that will stimulate our vagus nerve and yet release our brain chemicals. So now we're ready to dive into our second panel of the day. And it's my pleasure to introduce Pamay, Bassey, Noah Rabinowitz, and Sanyin Siang. Three people for who I have a huge respect and admiration. Pamay is the Chief Learning and Diversity Officer at Kraft Heinz. She's achieved incredible results in championing and developing the learning culture there at Kraft Heinz. Lots that we can all learn from what she's done there. She has a background with private equity at BlackRock, and super relevant for today, she happens to just have a degree from Stanford on symbolic symbols and artificial intelligence. So great to have you with us, Pamay.
Nice to be here. Thanks so much.
Yep. Next up, we also have Noah. Noah is Chief Learning Officer at Commonwealth Fusion Systems, where he's helping to discover fusion power of the source for future clean energy. He's previously been the CLO at Moderna, solving the COVID crisis. So you can see Noah has a theme of very meaty, impactful roles. And before that, he was CLO at Intel, arguably building the chips that power a lot of the things that we're talking about today. He's also been heavily involved in a project called the CLO Lift, aimed at upskilling learning leaders as well. So welcome, Noah.
Good to be here. Thank you.
And last but not least, on our second panel is Sanyin Siang. Sanyin is the world's #1 coach, and she's just back from London last week, the Thinkers 50 Gala, where she was recognised as a coaching legend, which I think is absolutely well-deserved. She also leads Duke University's Coach K Leadership and Ethics Centre. She's board director, she's CEO, she's CEO and board and startup advisor, and speaker and investor as well. Plenty that keeps her busy. On top of all of that, she's also writing and researching about superpowers, of which curiosity is one of the most powerful. So great to have you with us, Sanyin. So first off, let's start with what each of your views are on the opportunity that generative AI presents. So maybe Pamay, if I could come to you first.
Goodness, what a great question. I mean, I think the first thing is that we're learning every day what the opportunity is that generative AI presents. And we think about the fact, as you mentioned, that ChatGPT came out just a year ago, and so much has changed. I think one of the things that's very neat is that, AI, of course, is not new. Gen AI is the newest kind of instantiation of the technology. And we're seeing every day how people are using it to get smarter, to do things that humans didn't want to do, to do first drafts of things, to figure out how they can have one-on-one coaches. So I think the opportunity really is for us to continue to experiment, to see what it can take off our plates, if you will. And I'm speaking specifically around kind of down the middle of the road because, right, these are most people, as I'm in L&D, and my colleagues and my employees are not going to be talking about like military applications or the impact it's going to have on world elections or any of the things, the very big issues that are, if you want to say opportunity, might be a different flavor. But for all of us who are just trying to figure out how this technology is going to change our life, it's a huge opportunity to figure out how we can our lives can be improved if we engage in the right way.
I'm excited to see what some of those improvements looks like. Noah, what are your thoughts on the opportunity that it presents?
So I'm a lifelong learning professional, like most of your guests today, and I love talking about the role of AI in learning. I think one other perspective to look at it from is the impact to science, and solving really big problems that we need to solve fast. I think the previous panel talked about the impact of AI to speed and efficiency of our work. When you're working on something like climate change, for example, or on medical discovery, speed matters. There are lives on the line. Our planet is on the line. So anything we can do to become better, faster, more efficient, and to learn at the speed that we need to learn at, it's not a luxury anymore. I mean, these are existential issues that we're dealing with, and so the role that AI can play in science and engineering is just incredibly impactful, incredibly important to us.
I'll come back to you in a minute to dive a little bit deeper into that in your current context as well.
Sure.
Sanyin, your thoughts on what sorts of opportunities Gen AI presents for us?
I think just as in the past, every time there's a new technology, there are new opportunities and new possibilities, as what we've heard the previous panelist talked about. However, along with that, those possibilities can only be for the good if we are also thinking about the alignment of what it means to be human and doubling down on the things that make us human. One possibility, for example, in my world of leadership with generative AI is looking at it as perception, right? How can we be informed if it has all this data on how we're perceived? Because we as human beings, organizations, we all have our blind spots. So it's a perceptive aspects I think are really interesting in addition to the predictive. But my first job out of college was really at the American Association for the Advancement of Science, looking at the ethical, legal, and scientific implications of technologies before they become possibilities. And that's what I'm also excited to talk about and dive into with the panelists today.
About how we're perceived, because that's something that I see from my own use of generative AI is if you prompt it correctly, it gives you an honest answer back around something. So to tell it to be brutally candid about something and or particularly constructive, and that's one area where it doesn't have the filter that we have as humans in glossing things up, which is interesting to see from a perception perspective. So what are your own experiences in it? So maybe Pamay, in terms of your day job at Kraft Heinz, so how are you experiencing Gen AI there, and how are you encouraging it across the organization?
Sure. I mean, as a learning professional, it became very clear very quickly that it was my job. I was looking around to say who was going to start the conversation around AI at this organization. And I said, oh, I think it's me, right? And so one of the previous panelists, Mike, said a lot of people are not taking the time to engage in experimentation with these tools. They kind of hear, it feels like it's going to be a wave. It's just happening. And like, okay, one day I'll wake up and, these technologies will evolve. But we decided at Kraft Heinz that we want to have a global conversation around AI, understanding that Gen AI is not the first instantiation of AI that we've been using as a company. So we have a construct called University Day. It's a 24-hour day of learning where we literally around the clock learn so that everyone can learn in their own time zone. And this year we focused that 24-hour day of learning on AI. We wanted to do a couple of things. One, just level set so everyone knows what is AI, just define. We had a very AI 101 conversation. We invited colleagues from across the organization to say what's already happening at Kraft Heinz that uses AI, whether it is predictive or generative or that's machine learning, just to help people understand that these things are already happening, and here are the types of projects and the types of pilots and the types of things are being used at our company. And the last one was really to help people understand how AI could affect them personally and professionally. And I wanted to make sure, I mean, we are a very large company. We had legal at the table to say, hey, here are the guardrails, here are the guidelines, don't put, sensitive information into ChatGPT, et cetera, but really just trying to help people understand, get in there. I mean, the Curiosity Forum is a wonderful title, be curious. And the flip side of that emerged was have discernment, right? It has always been important to know and think about the right questions to ask, to look at the answers you're getting and say, does this make any sense? Just like one of the previous panelists was saying, if I get a phone call from someone who sounds like my mother saying, please send money, can I think, is this something that my mother would do? Like, is my mother sitting right next to me, et cetera? So it is curiosity and discernment. So we wanted to make sure that we gave people the opportunity to level set, understand what all of this was, and just get in there and be curious and start experimenting. And so that's what's happening at Kraft Heinz.
I think that's another word for the discernment. We have criticality as one of our 7 C's in the book, and I see the need for that critical eye of applying critical thinking into what we're seeing is becoming more and more necessary with some of the advancements. Noah, so you talked about using Gen AI for the advancement of science. I mean, in your organization anyway, you're working towards the goal of clean energy, which is one of the ultimate advancements of science. So how are you seeing Gen AI used within your organization at Commonwealth Fusion Systems?
I think when you apply AI to harder and bigger problems, it becomes harder to use it. So often we talk about AI used to help me with my writing, or to provide a little bit of feedback, or to improve something, or to generate a next iteration on a thought. And those are kind of micro applications that can really help an individual do their work better. When you're talking about massive engineering, decades-long engineering challenges that are first-time endeavors, AI can play a role in all kinds of aspects of that work, but it takes engineering to put AI into the engineering. You can't just open up an application and prompt a question and get the answer that you're looking for. You have to design it in and build it into the systems and the engineering plan, the schedule, the software engineering, the hardware engineering. It's a much more complex use of AI. Now the power of it is there, and like I mentioned, it can speed things up. It can manage tasks at a velocity that people cannot, but it still requires hard work to put it in. And I think that is a new field. So I think there's exploration happening, but it's not just at the fingertips the way a lot of us think about AI in other use cases and contexts.
So a 50-word prompt is not going to deliver the magical solution to how we achieve fusion energy.
No.
So Sanyin, I mean, you work with a lot of leaders as well. How have you been guiding them around how they should approach this notion of Gen AI within their organizations?
So something I think about, I mean, I'll come at it from 2 points of views, right? So one is, before ChatGPT was available, I already have a sense of what I came into AI. My first exposure to generative AI was actually through my sister, Connie Bakshi. Connie is one of the top AI generative artists in the world today. And she had talked to me about, like, AI generative art. What's that? And the way she explained it is AI is more of a paintbrush. Instead of a paintbrush, AI is a paintbrush, and it's about trying different prompts and understanding and experimenting and co-learning together, so that even different artists may be using the same data sets, but it'll be depending on how it's prompt. Just as an artist uses paintbrush in different ways, it will generate slightly nuanced responses, different responses. So my first experience with ChatGPT was just testing out. I'm developing a superpowers tool, and I said, okay, I wonder if it's curiosity, right? We approach this individually as scientists. I wonder what would happen if I put in this particular prompt. But instead of it being a singular, here's thing, and here's the answer, and here's, it stops there. I wonder what would happen if I try and ask the question in a different way. Would I get the same answers? Would I get different answers? Right? And what I discovered was it was co-learning with me the same, all along. And that was fascinating. So we can't look at as even these micro applications as a singular, but actually as a series in which it's learning, it's building one on top of the other. And I think that leads to very interesting possibilities. Now, the other aspect I think about when it comes to leadership, I think about social media as one of the technologies that's truly disrupted how we lead today, in the sense that Henry Timms wrote about power, and social media has shifted the power from the institutions to the individuals. Positional power doesn't have as much weight as it did 10, 20, 30 years ago. And I think with AI, the speed at which it can come up with ideas and connect ideas across huge data sets, I think what that means is knowledge is now a commodity. Expertise is now a commodity. But what we need to double down on is connection and curation and cross-pollination, relationships, because that's where AI can't yet go. It's smart, but there's different types of smart. We're talking about the relational superpowers and the virtue superpowers here.
So we need to be developing some of those superpowers across our people to be able to help them to navigate, which maybe leads me nicely onto the next question, Pamay. I'll come back to you. It sounds like within Kraft Heinz, you mentioned your university and this sort of 24-hour day of Gen AI. So how else are you getting people ready, if you like, for generative AI within the organization? So what sorts of things are you doing to either create the environment or build the skills so that people can take advantage?
It's a good question. I mean, I'll be honest and say we're at the beginning of that journey. I think one of the reasons why we had that 24 hours of learning is because it seemed like time was just passing and nothing, like someone has to do something so that we don't feel like we're not upskilling folks. So there's two things. One, am I upskilling my team? Is my team learning how, as learning professionals, to create more engaging learning experiences more effectively, more efficiently, whatever it is that this new technology is going to help us evolve as learning professionals? That was the one thing. But the other thing was, how can we make sure that everybody at the organization also is, not just, everyone has so much to do already. It's easy to just kind of put your head down and keep doing what you do. You lift your head and all of a sudden the whole world has changed. So it was those two things. And I will say that I'm happy that we've started a conversation. We'll continue. For example, I just saw the announcement that now you could create your own GPTs and skills, and I'm like, okay, I'm having an offsite with my leadership team. Let's get in there and practice. Now, of course, again, guardrails, we can't do it on our work computers, et cetera, but how can I make sure that, which seems very relevant to what we do as learning professionals, right? How can we make sure that we are learning how to use those tools? And so we're not just staying kind of in the old school and doing things in ways that are now becoming obsolete.
And it's great to see that you sort of grasped the mantle within Kraft Heinz to drive that forward. I think one of the things with Gen AI is it's not always clear where it should be led, if you like, in terms of which function. Should it come through IT? Should it come through ethics area? Should it come through strategy? Should it come through HR? Noah, I know you've been doing some work within the CLO lift work around the sort of drive. What are your views on sort of who should drive forward the Gen AI agenda?
That's a great question. So L&D has for many decades had what I call shiny object syndrome. We love the new thing, and AI is is not a new thing, but that a lot of the tools that are being driven by AI are very new, and we're chasing tools. And if you don't understand how to work with wood, you can get the best new tools and you're still not going to be a good carpenter. Yeah. And or I can give you the best ingredients in the world, and if you don't know how to cook, you're not going to make anything very good. And I think in L&D, we've sacrificed some really basic problems to chase new shiny objects. And so the CLO Lift effort is to go back to the most fundamental challenges that we face in learning. For example, how we govern learning in large, complex organizations. We haven't figured that out. How we invest and capitalize on the time investments that we make into learning, because that surpasses by orders of magnitude the hard investments we make into learning. Time is the biggest allocation we make into learning, and then, as we've been talking about, how we really aggressively go after new skill areas and make a material impact in an organization in a matter of months, not years. And until we can do that as a community across companies, across industries, and that we can prove that we really have strong skills and capabilities to drive that, I don't know if we're ready to own something as big as AI skilling for an entire organization. So I would love to say yes, but I think we have to go back to some basics. And I think we also, one of the things that I think is tough for being in learning is there's no common standard whatsoever. If you're a CFO, you can compare your work to other CFOs. You can't do that as a CLO. Everybody's running a different race. Everybody's got a different strategy. And so there's no ability to compare. What does good look like? Mm. And in the absence of that, we often just chase new. Newness becomes value. Mm. And I know that's a long answer to your question, but that's what CLO Lift is trying to address. It's trying to tackle the most fundamental problems, go back to basics, so that when there are new tools coming online, as there will be forever, we know how to use them, and we know how to use them for good and for the purpose and mission that we've set ourselves out to tackle.
Agree. Yeah. Keep comments coming in the chat as well, and your questions there too. Sanyin, when your sort of advisory capacity, where you're working with boards, with CEOs, etc., is there any guidance that or any steer that you're giving them for how they should navigate? And should it be CEO driving something? Should they, empower their leadership teams? Any words of wisdom and from the conversations that you've been having there?
Well, while I haven't had the conversation with CEOs I'm working with about AI, I think that's coming pretty soon. I can step back a bit and just double down on what Noah and Pamay were talking about, which is, for everything, don't conflate the end with the means to the end, right? So have clarity around what is it we're trying to achieve, where we want people to go, and now what are the range of tools that is in alignment with our ethos and our organization that can help get us there. AI is just it is a tool. It is not an end. It is a means to a particular end. So how would that fit into our larger toolbox of things that we have at our disposal to be able to drive to our mission, to our purpose, to what's meaningful? Those are the type of things we have to think about for any new technologies, any new tools, not just AI.
So don't confuse the means to get there with the end in itself, which I think ties to Noah's shiny object syndrome that we're often guilty of falling into that trap. There's a great question in the chat here, which Pamay, I'll bring to you with the second part of your role beyond learning of also diversity. So question from Tracy around, in leading the charge for Gen AI adoption, how do you prioritize diversity and inclusion, ensuring that the benefits of AI are accessible to a broad range of perspectives and backgrounds?
It's a really great question. I mean, I think you can't have a conversation with about AI without someone bringing up the idea that, you know, we're training on the data that exists in the world, and the world, there's a lot of bias embedded into the world, a lot of discrimination. We are, you know, what we don't want to do is amplify those things with the use of this new technology. I think that is, whether it's discernment or critical thinking, where it's so important to say, if you are interacting with this technology and you receive some sort of information, if I ask a question, I get a response, you have to think critically. Hey, wait, is there, just like you do with interacting with humans, is there bias baked into this answer? Is this something that I need to somehow, you know, edit because I know that this particular large language model is trained on data that had bias baked into it? But I think larger than that, there are organizations that are working on this. I ran into a gentleman who's working on a large language model that's affectionately called Black GPT, where they're training it not necessarily on just data in the world, but also on Black and Brown history and culture, and working with HBCUs to make sure that this is a different kind of, it's trained in a different way. And I'm super excited to learn more about that. I think you just have to have eyes open and know this is an issue, and look for opportunities to work with, partner, to amplify those who are doing work to counter, both to counter bias in the models, and also, to your point, making sure there's access, because of course there's going to be differentiated access to this technology. It's just, that's the world that we live in. Just to be aware of all of these different issues and try to be a force for good, and not kind of put your head in the sand around these issues as well.
That's great. Thanks, Pamay. So we're coming close to time. So maybe I could get just closing words from each of you with any sort of words of advice for organizations exploring Gen AI based on your own experiences or your own thoughts. So maybe if I come to you first, Sanyin, any words of advice for people exploring Gen AI?
So because we don't know what the full range of what it can yet do or how we can yet use it, we go back to curiosity, right? So when I was at IIIS, we look at how do we understand the ethical, legal, social implications of technologies, behavioral genetics or cloning before they become full realities. We bring people across all different industries and sectors, religious leaders to scientists and lawyers and media, to come together in a room so we can get a fuller big picture, right? Because we're all seeing it from our particular lens. And to really understand how we can leverage something in a way that is responsible and as a force for good, we actually have to bring in a diversity of perspectives. So I would encourage, as the audience is continuing to engage in forums such as the Curiosity Forum, to personally go out and talk with a broad swath of people and gain different perspectives, so you can be informed about what are the possibilities and be imaginative, as well as what are the alignments and the guardrails that we need to put into place.
I love it. Be curious about that diversity of perspectives. Yeah. Noah, any final words of wisdom, words of advice?
I love that too. I love, a diversity of perspectives as one great ambition for us in this work. I think one of those perspectives is have an engineer's mindset. We talk so much about exploration with AI. I don't think that means anything goes. And I don't think that means just, today I'm trying this, tomorrow I'm doing that. It's game on for, build use cases, have an engineer's mindset, have some discipline, have a plan, test and learn continuously. But it's not, there's just too much out there for us, and it can be a little overwhelming if we don't engineer it to the outcomes that we're trying to achieve with mission and purpose. So it's still, exploration doesn't mean we give up the discipline and we give up structure and rigor. And I think there's an opportunity to bring stronger use cases into L&D, specifically the way we do AI.
Thanks, Noah. And Pamay, your words of advice.
I think some of the conversations like this that I've been in with learning professionals, there's been this feeling like, oh, wow, I'm so behind. And I would say if there's one thing that I would say to those listening, especially if you're listening to experts on these various panels, some of which were, obviously have been studying this for a long time, is things are moving so fast that everyone is behind in some way, shape, or form. There may be like one person who's like, I know all the things about AI, but everyone is learning, and because things are changing so much. And so I would just say, get in there, curiosity, of course, experiment, make sure that you are not just allowing time to go by, because there's still plenty of time to get in there and learn how this is going to affect us as humans. And I would also say that, when we talk about who should lead this in organizations, there's always a value in, if it's not clear who should lead, I could just get the right people in a room, right? I could just say, hey, can someone from legal show up? Can someone from IT show up? Can someone from learning show up? And we're having conversations about what's happening and how this is affecting us. Because again, there's no single source of the truth as we're watching these technologies evolve. So I would just encourage people to stay aware, realize that, this is going to change the way we live and learn. And there's no time like the present to get in and figure out what's going on and how you can contribute to the conversation. So.
Big thank you, Pamay. And my own one is, trying to keep up to date with it. And in fact, Jaeden, who's on our next panel, he's got his podcast, ChatGPT podcast, which has 1 million listens, I think. And that's my own personal way to stay up to date, because he probably has his finger on the pulse of this more than anyone else in terms of the most up-to-date thinking. So big thank you, Sanyin, Pamay, Noah. Fascinating conversations, as always. Great words of advice. And with that, we'll bring to close this panel. Thank you.
Welcome to the last panel, which is focusing on where's technology going next, the future, and weak signals that we may find that are giving some indication of what it's all about. I'm delighted to be joined by Jaeden, Ben, and Brandon, and I'm going to ask if they can each introduce themselves. So, Jaeden, you give us a brief introduction.
Yeah, great to be here. Super excited. My name's Jaeden Schafer. I host the AI Chat podcast. It's the #1 AI podcast. I cover pretty much for the last year, I've covered every AI project and every piece of AI news that has happened. So really interested in everything happening in this space. And then at the same time, I'm the CEO of AI Box, which is a no-code AI app builder and marketplace. So kind of in the projects and news side, and then also in the actively building technology in the space.
Thank you, Jaeden. Ben, welcome.
Hi, I'm Ben Laurie. I'm really a security guy, but I spent the last 8 years or so working in AI research groups where security tends to translate into safety. And so I do that kind of stuff. I do a lot of open source too.
Thank you, Ben. Brandon?
Good day, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm Brandon Carson. I'm the global head of learning, leadership, and cultural experiences at Starbucks, and I've been a lifelong L&D professional going on 25 years now. So really happy to be here with you all.
And Brandon, could you tell us briefly what your previous job was, if you don't mind?
I led talent development for Walmart, where I was also leading our education and credentialing platform as well, where we provided education opportunities, academic degrees, and short-form learning credentials for our U.S. workforce.
Thank you for that. Sorry to put you on the spot like that, but it's fascinating to me that the size of the workforce that you were learning and responsible for, and your attitude, which was, no matter what background they came from or what schooling system they'd come through, you had a reality was to teach and to train and to upskill at scale. And that's part of some of the things we want to talk about today. But before we get into that, what's your view, Brandon, on Gen AI and the future? And are you pro? Are you against? Are we mammalian? Is it existential? What do you think?
No, I think we're at a really big inflection point. This has been great. Listening to the previous two panels, it's just been great soaking it all in. But when I focus on my practice, which is the people practice inside a corporate, organizations, which impact pretty much my last job, the largest private workforce, and this one now, which is significant as well. And these are, in a lot of ways, the most vulnerable workforce when you look at the two worker types, the physical worker and the cognitive worker. But no, I'm really happy about where we're going and the acceleration that's been happening. I firmly believe for L&D, the next 5 years will be more transformational than the last 50. And it's critically important for all of us in the people practice inside of corporations to develop a deeper acumen around AI and understand how it will bring efficiency, rigor, and adaptable relevance to the products that we build and deliver for the workforces that we support and for the businesses that we support. So I think, yes, there's a hype cycle and a lot we don't know yet, which has really become evident in hearing the great speakers you've had. But we can't bury our head in the sand. And like Noah said earlier, we can't just rely on the bling aspect of it. We really need to understand the significant impact AI will have on every job and worker, and understand that new ways of working will evolve, and we have to be the center of transformation for that in the people practice. So I'm excited about AI and where it's going.
Thank you, Brandon. Ben?
Yeah, so I think generative AI is misnamed because it really isn't intelligent at all. I think it displays, no intelligence whatsoever, at least in my experiments with it. I think actually what we're seeing is a bias in humans that has not been previously recognized, I suspect for obvious reasons, which is that fluency looks like intelligence. And I think, a lot of people are conned by these models into thinking that they're being intelligent because they're very fluent. And, my personal position is that there's something about cognition and knowledge that we have absolutely no idea how it works, and we haven't made any progress whatsoever towards doing that. I think the risk of superintelligence using Gen AI as it currently exists is effectively zero because we haven't even got intelligence, which is not to say they're not useful. I mean, they do a fantastic job of sifting through huge amounts of data and acting as great predictors of what similar data will look like, and that's an extremely useful thing to do, but it isn't intelligence.
Fascinating. Jaeden, what are you learning from your million subscribers?
Yeah, pretty much what I am seeing in this space is that I tend to agree with Ben that we have not. I think it's kind of it's funny we call it artificial intelligence. I don't think it's intelligence. It's computer algorithms. It's software. It's trained to do a certain thing. But in no means do I think it's intelligent. That being said, I don't think that matters. I think that's literally irrelevant whether it's intelligent or not because it can accomplish a task. And so from what I'm seeing and what I believe is that within the next 5 years, we will have at least the capability, regardless of whether it's implemented or not, the capability of replacing a majority of jobs today. And I'm not saying, all jobs will disappear and we're going to have to do universal basic income and no one's going to work. I think jobs will change. I think one of the big shifts is we'll go from people being essentially task completers, like an employee is working on a task, to now we're system creators, we're creating systems. But I think when you start combining, what we call AI, artificial intelligence, but really these softwares and tools, and you start combining them with humanoid robots and like robotics and where that's going in the next 5 years, I think blue collar, white collar, all jobs will be able to be automated and most functions will be able to be replaced with AI.
That's amazing. Most functions replaced by AI within 5 years. It's a huge impact on the workforce globally, right? So what are the weak signals of what comes after? You mentioned universal basic income, which is everybody getting some cash, because if we're going to have a capitalist system that drives and generates objects, they have to be purchased, and consumers need to purchase things with money. That's a very simplistic way of thinking about it, I know, but what are some of the weak signals about what's coming after, or what are we mutating into? It's Brandon.
I think, when we look at how one of the biggest areas I see is how we make decisions too. So it's not, it's really, yes, a lot of AI will work on task-based, will have its impact with task-based work. And we know how companies work. If something can be automated, they will automate it. And that will have a big impact. I agree with Ben and the other, and Jaeden as well, on the impact to the workforce will be significant. But I think that we also have to think about decisions. So in the workplace, decisions will be impacted. How we make decisions will be impacted. There will be human-only decisions reserved for more conceptual and less contextual decisions. There will be machine-only decisions. There will be machines that are responsible for most of those routine decision-making questions, if you will. And then collaboration between humans and machines. So working together, machines and humans will validate decisions. And so I think what we have a hard time grasping right now is just the ways of working. I mean, if you look across L&D and HR in a lot of respects right now, what's the number one conversation we're having? It's return to office and ways of working and how we can bring these back together after the pandemic we just had, right? And so I think, yes, technology is exponentially advancing, but there are decisions that are being made about ways of working and just what work really means that are not necessarily moving at the speed of technology. And so we will have to synthesize these things as we go forward, because just the last couple of years has been basic questions about office and work and what it means to come back to work or not back to work, and all of these different things as jobs are evolving, as job architectures are evolving, and as we look at work in different ways. So that's why I'm not so bullish on the speed of technology driving everything. I think it's how we make decisions about how we want to work that will really drive a lot of how we integrate this technology.
That's fascinating. Weak signals for you, Ben, and do you agree with the decision making as a huge focus?
I mean, I do think that, as I said, there's no intelligence there. And so I think, what we're going to see at least with stuff that's derived from the AIs of today is the replacement of, mundane tasks, things that you don't have to think about very hard. And I'm not sure what the limits of don't have to think about are. But I'm pretty sure that as I said before, that cognition as we know it and knowledge are not things that we're seeing in these models, and I don't think we will see them without a radical change in how we make them and how they work. And so, I'm not saying that's not going to happen. I think we might figure that out. I expect we will figure that out eventually, but I have absolutely no idea whether that's in 10 years or 100 years or 1,000 years. But in the meantime, I do think that routine stuff is the kind of stuff that'll get replaced. I think somebody made the distinction between knowledge workers and I can't remember what the other one was, but physical work, I guess.
Physical,
yeah. And I think and I don't see it as a bad thing, eliminating the need for the drudgery. But I do think that things that require you to think hard will still require you to think hard. And these tools might help you with it. I mean, for example, I've used Copilot in Visual Studio Code for coding, and it saves me a lot of typing. It doesn't save me much thinking because it's almost always wrong in at least subtle ways.
Yeah. And you talk about we need to look at our own cognition and understand what human cognition is before we can even begin to model it. And you think the models that sit within the current tools that are out in the market are not there yet. But then the fascinating thing, you talked about fluency and intelligence and things that seem fluent present as intelligent to us, and we deem them intelligent just because they're fluent. That blew up in the chat. People really reacted to that quite well.
I just want to say I'm not sure that our own cognition is a good one to model on. One of the things I've always wondered is why we want to replicate humans, because humans are kind of shit. I would prefer a better kind of cognition, to be honest.
Yes. So this is, I mean, just briefly, where are we finding examples of better cognition other than human? I mean, you don't. Yes.
I mean, nowhere. But I really think that reproducing what humans do is not a great idea. They're unreliable, they lie, they've got their own motives. There's all sorts of stuff that you don't want in your servants, right?
Very soft. Yes, exactly. So that's another track we should go down at some point. What is the better cognition that we're looking for down the line? But Jaeden, it's back to you. What are some of the weak signals you're hearing? Thinking about where things that may give us an indication of where things are going in the future, stuff to follow down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, well, first off, I don't think the whole universal basic income. So it's regardless of people's opinions or on what I have to say, this is obviously something that Sam Altman, the founder of OpenAI, talks about a lot. He believes that's where it's going. I don't believe that that is the solution. I don't believe universal basic income is going to be the solution. And part of the reason is, while I said most jobs today will be automated or replaced, however you want to phrase it, and I believe that, I don't think that the people doing those jobs will be replaced and have nothing to do. And that's kind of the assumption a lot of people are making, like, oh my gosh, if the AI can automate and do everything that's being done by people today, all these people are going to be jobless. I don't think that's going to happen. I think, the big shift is going to be people will move from task doers to system creators. And essentially you're going to be able to 10x your outputs. But I think a lot of people will still be doing things. Now, that being said, when it comes to the concept there is like in a business, if you have the ability to 10x your output, you are able to essentially just 10x the business or make it larger. And so that's kind of where that goes. But some places where this doesn't scale is in physical jobs. Like you think, trash man that comes and collects your garbage once a week. Some people are like, well, he's not getting replaced by AI. Well, probably the garbage truck will get replaced by a self-driving garbage truck, and there'll be a humanoid robot that operates it if there's any issues. So yes. And in that case, that person, there's only a finite amount of people that need their trash collected every week. And so there are a lot of jobs that those people will be completely replaced. I think, it's more productive rather than talking about, well, AI is not there today. It's unable to do a lot of things. It's not perfect. Like, look at the rate of progress. I think we're all seeing what's going on right now and extrapolate that for 5 years. Think about Moore's law. I know it was, it's for computer chips, not necessarily for artificial intelligence. But eventually, I think a lot of these jobs get replaced or automated. And so the most productive conversation we can have is, what does that look like? And, what do we do to the people that are displaced? And like, who's not getting displaced? What is shifting and changing? And I think that's kind of the area to focus on.
That's fascinating. I have a question for all of you. It's like, what do you wish the outcome would be? If you could wave a magic wand, what do you wish the outcome is going to be for this particular phase of humanity? With AI and Gen AI. Shall we start with Jaeden? Let's start with you again.
Oh, I hate this question, but
sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, really, it's hard because for me, I do get a lot of fulfillment out of what I do. It's a ton of fun, like podcasting, for example, bringing in guests, networking. So like, to me, that's a ton of fun. And one thing I will say is just because AI or software could replace what I do, right? I could create an AI version of myself with an AI clone of my voice and an AI video. And it goes and gathers the news articles and it, creates like my thing every day. Just because AI can do something doesn't mean it will, or I'm not going to make the choice to have an AI run my podcast. Well, actually that's hard. If it could completely automate it, I might for some of the mundane things like the news, but there's like certain elements that I wouldn't. And so what do I hope the outcome is? I'm not sure it really matters what I hope the outcome is. I think the outcome is inevitable, and it is that most mundane things will be automated, and you'll still have the choice to choose whether you want to do your job or not. Yeah, I don't know. It's a hard one. I think it's inevitable, so I feel like it's just irrelevant what my hope is.
No, it's inevitable. We may as well ride the wave and surf it for as much as we can get at the moment. And then shift.
Right. The shifts will come.
The shifts will come. Ben, what do you think? What are the outcomes from you?
So I'm a big fan of E&M banks and the culture kind of setting, and I think the foundation of that is an abundance of resources and energy, but with AIs to help you consume them, right? By the way, I think this idea that AIs will create a ton of money and that will make us all rich is completely insane. Money is pointless. It's the resources and the energy that you need. But yeah, I think what I would love is infinite resource, or at least very large amounts of resource, and AIs to make me the toys I want to play with. Basically, I'm all about playing with toys.
And how about you, Brandon?
I think I agree. It's hard to predict things. I fear it will increase polarization and disinformation. I don't really see it as software. I see it more as like markets and bureaucracies and institutions. It's human created, so that's problematic to begin with. I do think that there are a lot of things, when you think of just the US, for example, we have a lot of challenges in front of us, especially the chasm being created between these two worker types, the physical and cognitive worker. And AI is going to expose a lot of that potential polarization, a lot of disinformation around that. We have an education crisis in this country. We've had nearly 1 million teachers leave our public school system since the pandemic, and 90% of our kids go through the American public education system. Most Americans don't have an academic degree, and most Americans don't have access to one. So I think we have a lot of societal challenges that AI can either fix or help fix, or can drive more polarization and increasing that chasm between the society. So I think it's too early to tell. I do have a lot of positive aspirations, obviously, but it's hard to see. You can be on the Hegel side of things, who thinks revolution will come, or you can be on the more like, yeah, we create jobs throughout humanity as technology has come, and we'll all be fine. So I don't know, but it'll be, like I said, the next 5 years are going to be quite interesting for us.
Do you think that AI is going to fundamentally change some of the institutions that we take for granted? This was something that came up in the chat about things like law. We know is being phenomenally shifted because AI does so much of the heavy lifting. Like, can you imagine AI going and finding all the case law and really bringing out things that you need, drudge work that you used to have to do as a lawyer, know everything in Butterworth, for example. It's changing the way that information can be presented in cases and in courts and so on, having a huge impact on the law itself. And of course, AI will become subject to law and copyright and IP and all that's going to be. But other institutions like our democracy, like our government, and our security, do you think that there are challenges, or do you think, I mean, are there things we have to watch out for? That's, I think, the base of my question. Ben, what do you think?
I think, yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? I think, being assisted with doing things makes you worse at doing them without being assisted. And ultimately, I don't know if that's a great idea. So like, GPSs, I think were one of the early examples, I think, of widely used human assistance devices, and I think they caused people to be less good at knowing where they are and how to get to other places without them. I've always been quite good at that, but I definitely noticed that there are a lot of people who have literally no idea how to even get back to where their car is parked without a GPS. And it does concern me that, losing the faculties for doing the somewhat complicated things well might end up with everything being a bit shitter, because we're still needed, right, to worry about those things. And I think the more you can rely on something else to do it mostly right most of the time, the less good you're going to be about getting it, actually perfect. So I worry about this with programming, for example, as I mentioned earlier. One of the things that has frustrated me hugely in my very long now programming career is that, I feel like it's obvious what I am trying to do, and I wish the computer would just do it for me. And then now it's starting to do that quite surprisingly well, actually. But it does worry me that the more of that goes on, the less I will see the mistakes it's making, and the more stuff will sneak through into production code and bite us in bad ways in the future.
Things to hang on to. We've only got 3 minutes left, which it's such a great conversation. So I'm going to just ask us to bring it to a close and ask each of you, what's the final thought you'd like to leave us with? Brandon.
I'd just say that I am an optimist with this. I do see some disturbing trends, obviously, with lack of access, to education. I think that's a key point for us to think about. And also, I worry about AI becoming just a flywheel for authoritarianism, because our governments don't understand it and don't seem to be curious enough to seek a deeper understanding. So I'm generally an optimist, but lots of question marks.
Thank you. Jaeden?
Okay, my last thing I want to bring up, I don't know how this ties into anything, but this is just something I've been thinking about a lot today. So picture this. There's a company called, I think it's called like Personal AI, and there's a number of others where essentially you upload all of the articles you've ever written, YouTube videos you've ever created, podcasts I've ever recorded, essays you've ever written in college, whatever. You throw it all in there. It's called Personal AI, and it makes it like a little chat of you. Okay. There's also a company called Rewind. They made this like neck pendant that you like wear around your neck with a camera. It follows you, watches everything you do and records it. And you can, oh, what did I say like 7 weeks ago? I mean, aside from an argument with, my wife and being like, I told you I said this, not that, it's on the Rewind. Okay. Other than that, a little dystopian, don't know if I'd wear it, but the data gathering tools are there. So imagine that capability mixed with a humanoid robot that is your own personal replacement. How many times have you heard someone say, oh my gosh, I wish I could clone myself? Imagine a humanoid robot that has all of that data in. And so when people say like, oh, X, Y, and Z job function or role won't get replaced by an automated system, is what I'm calling it instead of AI, if you don't want to believe it has intelligence. Think about the capabilities of cloning yourself 10 times and having each of them do different things that you do. This isn't just in the software world. We're not just talking about, this AI is doing a software thing on your computer screen. This transfers into the real physical world. And I think the implications are, whether you like it or not, we should have discussions and start thinking about what that means and what that future might look like.
Fascinating. Brilliant. Thank you. And Ben, last word.
I just want to mention that Jaeden's idea of recreating people by, recreating all of the things that they did comes up in a great sci-fi book called Accelerando by Charlie Stross back when he wrote good books, which I highly recommend. Anyway, I think, my final thought is I actually think we're in for, a disappointing next few years. I think that most of the loud voices in this space are very incentivized to do one of two things. One is to get books published and newspaper articles published, etc., by declaring our untimely doom, and the other is to prop up the valuation of their ridiculous companies by explaining how awesomely intelligent these things are and how again they're going to cause our AI doom. Don't believe either of them. Like I say, I think we're a far way off intelligence, and I think we're going to stay that way for a while yet.
Thank you, Ben. As Miss Marple said, follow the money. But I'd like to thank you all, Jaeden, Ben, and Brandon, for fascinating conversation, looking at where's technology going next, the future and some weak signals. So much in there. Thanks again. And I'm going to hand over to Simon.